Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Today, I wanted to talk about a creature, well, rather a set of creatures, that have been in Dungeons & Dragons since at least 2nd edition, and that is dinosaurs. For those of you that may not know, dinosaurs have featured pretty heavily in a lot of D20 games, in a lot of games really. But in Dungeons & Dragons in particular, they've been around for quite a while, and they've made the jump, of course, over to D20 Modern, and they're also in Pathfinder as well. And, well, again, they're not the only games that those are in, but it's interesting that they consistently show up so much, and while my experiences are not going to be everybody else's experiences, I've played at about... gosh, I can't even think. I want to say about 18 different groups and combinations of players and DMs. And dinosaurs have not come up once any single time. And sure, we have scaly lizard monsters, behemoths, and wyverns, dragons, obviously, lizard folk, but never dinosaurs. They don't really crop up a whole lot. Certainly, for some games and settings, that has changed. 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons in particular, with the Jungles of Cholt, and everything going on there. The Rosny C and his crazy-ass dangerous dungeon that he's set up. That whole thing is, as a one notable and very recent exception, that's really been expanded upon and built upon really, really nicely. Then, of course, Warhammer Fantasy, the Lizardmen faction there, they utilize dinosaurs in this world called Cold Ones pretty extensively, and it adds an interesting layer to the faction overall and to the Jungles of Lustria. And those dinosaurs are more... they're based off of real-world counterparts, but they are definitely fictionalized and have a whole lot of great, awesome stuff stacked. You have to go check it out, and maybe it'll be a video for another time. It's just great. I love the Warhammer setting. But anyways, I'm getting away from myself. These creatures constantly show up, but in my experience, throughout my years of gaming, they never really get used all that much. And thinking back on it, that's actually really unfortunate, because it is something interesting and different to throw out there. I mean, you could easily do a Land of the Lost kind of situation, or the Land That Time Forgot, however you want to categorize or slice that or describe it. Point being, you could do an ancient world, just absolutely primeval, untouched by mortal, civilized hands, any kind of hands, and it's just left in this prehistoric age. This ancient, bygone, not even an era, just a time that a spot that the gods missed when rebuilding and remaking the world, a place where these creatures have grown and thrived. And it can be a sizable continent, maybe not like the size of Asia, but you could still make a pretty good sized continent and have it full of just all these different varieties of life, something unique and exotic, and it can be a fun situation to throw your players into. And it's something that I'm definitely considering doing, and I highly recommend you do if you haven't done it already. Because after doing my Classes That Clash with Setting video, talking about the monk and how they're a little bit out of place for a lot of Western high fantasy-esque settings, or at least they can be, I got to thinking, those dinosaurs kind of felt out of place to me for a long time, but it just kind of hit me when I started playing again a game that has cemented itself pretty firmly as one of my all-time favorites, and that's Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter World would be an absolutely fantastic game setting to throw at your players, and I'm sure many DMs out there have already done this, or players have suggested this. It's definitely something... I get too many campaign ideas as it is, but it's definitely something I want to inflict on at least one group of my players at some point. I mean, you could easily take the Tyrannosaurus Rex, give it a fiery breath weapon, and boom, you have an Anjanath. Replace that with with an electric breath weapon, and you have the Fulgur Anjanath, which, by the way, if anybody doesn't know, Fulgur is the Latin for electricity or lightning, and I only know that because of my own research for my own tabletop game that I've been working on for far too long. Anyways, I'm sorry, I'm getting off track. You can do a lot of different things with just the basic dinosaur types that are listed there. I mean, so many different templates can be applied to these oversized, scaly reptilian animals, and you can make something incredibly unique and fun, something that would fit in a Monster Hunter setting. That, and adding in the wyverns is easy enough. Wyverns are in there, they have poison attacks, make it green and scaly, a little bit more dragon-like, and you have your Rathian. Change it to red scales, and now you have your red Rathian. And there are plenty of other ways that you can tweak this and make it feel a bit more like Monster Hunter. Aesthetically, the player's weapons need to be bumped up to some ridiculous sizes in order to deal some significant damage to these oversized monsters they're hunting. Maybe not to the extent that Monster Hunter World does it, but I will leave that up to you entirely. Certainly it strikes me that the setting is going to be more of a low magic setting, so a lot of character classes like clerics, sorcerers, summoners, wizards aren't going to quite fit so well, but as long as you're establishing that beforehand with your players that this setting is going to be low magic, that should go over pretty well all on its own. They're going to know what they are getting into, just if you talk to them a little bit beforehand. So there shouldn't be too much of a problem in doing this. And then again, maybe you want to leave the magic in there. You certainly can, and it certainly does sound interesting enough all on its own merits right there. A Monster Hunter, but with some magic thrown in? Hell yeah, that could be a lot of fun. Oh, another class that fits in really nicely there is Alchemist, which, by the way, what I'll be putting over here in this region-ish is a link to the Alchemist build guide that I've got going on. I'm going to plug that shamelessly. Please go click, look, enjoy, rate, critique me, let me know if I'm missing something or absolutely screwing up. Anyways, continuing on. So, I think this is a really good, really unique opportunity for a campaign setting that could be incredibly fun, and it's going to require very minimal adaptation. Most of it's going to be aesthetic and just running things in a low magic setting. The only other thing that I could think of that I might suggest is setting up hit point values and excuse me, different levels of toughness or damage reduction for the different animal parts. So the Anjanath would be fairly tougher, a little bit tougher on its outside, but once you get underneath, inside the legs, you can start dealing extra damage. Or, you know, if you're targeting its neck where the sacs are that let it breathe fire, you could deal some extra damage there. Or if you score a critical hit, potentially weaken or disable or just outright destroy its ability to breathe fire. Certainly if you cut the tail off of a Rathian, you're going to reduce your chances of being poisoned down significantly to just about zero. You still got the claws to contend with, being hit with the significantly shorter non-flail-like end of its tail, or being just straight up eaten or have fire breathed all over you. Again, there's so many different possibilities here. Adding in these different destructible portions of a monster can help change its abilities and fundamentally affect the tactics that the players approach these fights with as they track down and hunt these creatures. It just sounds like so much fun to me, and I'm excited to try this out. But certainly this is not the only video game that could be adapted to this sort of a setting, and certainly I'm not the first one to have done this. If you have your own thoughts, ideas, or twists, or if you've done this before, please go down to the comments and let me know down below there. I'd love to engage in discussion and just swap ideas, tips, tricks, hints, suggestions, and certainly discuss other games that could be adapted. Hell, let's not even limit it to games. There are so many different good books out there, good movies that could really make for fun, unique, and awesome settings. But Today's video is going to be short. I really have not slept much yet, and I'm starting to feel just a tad under the weather. So with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so much for your time, and you folks have yourselves a good night.